Hey everybody, Jane here, and I read books 4, 5, and 6 of the Ice Planet Barbarian series, and I want to talk to you about them. There may be spoilers in these videos, so please proceed with caution.
Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soul spoken.
All right, so earlier this year, the end of last year, I realized that I love Ice Planet Barbarians. Like, holy crap, how can anything be this good? I just want to read all the Barbarian books. It has been a crazy journey. I did a video where I talked about books 1 through 3, so I wanted to go ahead and talk about books 4, 5, and 6. And probably what I'll continue to do is every few books, I will make a video and we can have a little discussion about them for other people who just want to talk about their feelings. So, book 4, my physical copy is actually being borrowed by a friend, so I don't have that one with me, but I will stick a picture somewhere up in the box. Book 4, I think, was my least favorite. And I would say that it's kind of neck and neck with book 1. I didn't love book 1 because of all the sci-fi stuff that happened prior to the couple getting together, Georgie and Vectal. But then once Georgie and Vectal got together, I loved it. This book was almost the opposite. I did not like Harlow and I think his name's Rook. Or Rook. I didn't like them as a couple. And the whole first part of the book where they are off together in the wilderness was not for me. So I guess I should back up and tell you what book 4 is about. Harlow, who is such an interesting character, she had been diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor prior to being abducted by aliens. She is abducted, she's brought to this wonderful little planet, and she's given her key, and she does a scan in the ancient ship and finds out her cancer is cured. She is no longer terminally ill with cancer and has a whole new lease on life. While she is with the others at the ship, at the ancient ship in book 3, she is abducted by a barbarian. This barbarian, we learn later, is the brother from the hero in book 2. So this guy, his parents had his older brother, and then when they resonated again, the mother did not want to stay married and have a baby with dad again, but the council said, you have to do that. You don't have to live with him, go with him, but you have to have a baby. We are going extinct here. You got to do this. So they have this baby, and the dad kidnaps the mom and takes her off to the wilderness. The mom does not like the dad, and among the things that happen is after the baby is born, and they have the oldest son who is the hero in book 2. They are out in the wilderness. The baby is born. The dad goes to get the key for the baby. The mom dies. The older son is injured, and so the dad takes the older son and drops him back with the barbarians, and then the younger son takes and continues to raise in the wilderness. When the kid is about, I think he was like 7 or 8, so young, but not a baby. And maybe he was even a little bit older than that. Maybe he was like 12 or 13. He was young though. His dad died. So he's basically feral. He doesn't have language, like he doesn't have the barbarian language, and obviously he doesn't have the English language. He has a limited understanding of things, like he has a lot of instincts with his Qui going off, but he doesn't really understand what he's supposed to do or why, or he just knows these aliens are bad and he's supposed to stay away from them. So anyway, he abducts Harlow because he doesn't really know what's going on. And the first part of the book is like them connecting, her kind of showing him how things work, explaining how things work, And one thing I will say for all three of these books, books 4, 5, and 6, I do believe each of the guys is a virgin. And I love the virgin hero. Like, is like one of my favorite tropes. Now, I didn't necessarily care for it as much in this book. The other two books, chef's kiss. But so in these three books, we have a virgin hero. So Harlow and this guy get together, and we have a fairly big time jump. They have moved to kind of close to the ocean so that it's easier for them to live and to manage. And there's some other monsters there. We get to see some new geography. It's cool. Well, Liz and Rook's brother, but they don't know they're brothers, are out hunting in that area or whatever, and they find Harlow. And Harlow's not doing so good. So they convince the guy that, we need to take her back to the caves because she's very sick. She's sicker than she should be because Liz at this time is also very pregnant and is not doing nearly as badly as Harlow. So they're like, okay, we need to get her back to the caves to be seen by the healer. So they go back to the caves, and the healer is like, listen, basically because the Queen is keeping this cancer at bay, this pregnancy has been really hard on Harlow because the Queen is trying to manage the cancer, which is a brain tumor, and then also the pregnancy, and it's just wearing her Queen out. So she needs to stay here so that the lady can help. And then, of course, Harlow ends up having the baby, and then they go and bring down the monsters that have the Queen in them so that his baby can get a Queen. And he's like, man, I wouldn't have remembered that that needed to happen. I probably couldn't have done that. But he doesn't really want to be with the group. And so, like, Harlow is very concerned that he's going to leave her and just wander off on his own because he's so used to being alone. And even though she really loves him and wants to be with him, there's a lot of really good reasons that she needs to stay, in the caves and with barbarians, especially if they continue to have babies, which, is obviously the hope because these people are bordering on extinction. I liked the second part better. Once they got back with the aliens or with the barbarians, I was having a good time, but I didn't like the first like half of this book. Also, I felt like the book ended up focusing so much on the guy and his history. And like, while that's deep and that's interesting and it's like connected to book 2, I felt like Harlow and her terminal cancer needed to be a little more front and center, and it wasn't. And I was kind of like, I wanted more of that. I wanted more of her past and how that was affecting her and how she was feeling and like the new lease on life and this and that and this. And we get a little bit of that, but I could have gotten so much more. So that book, I think, has been the only book of the series so far that was really a miss for me. I really didn't like it very much, and it kind of let me down. It was still a 4-star because Ruby Dixon is a goddess. But, most of the barbarian books have been 5 stars. I think I've given a 5-star to everything except for the first book and the 4th book. So, yeah, really didn't enjoy the 4th book. However, the 5th book, Tiffany's story, I loved this. All right, so Tiffany was one of the girls that was essayed during the abduction in book 1. And she has a lot of trauma and PTSD from that. Now, it has been about a year, and she is aware that at some point she is probably going to resonate. And she has real concerns about when she resonates, there are expectations. The resonance is all about making babies, and she feels like she can't even touch a guy right now because of everything that happened, and she's just not ready, and she's having a lot of trauma. While this is all going on, the barbarians that are single are all pursuing her, not necessarily expecting resonance, which is their fated mate system, but they are pursuing her because they would like just to be her boyfriend, basically. You know, there's if you've never read the books, you may not know this. There's a real shortage of women in this world. There's like one woman to every two men. So like half of these guys are never going to have girlfriends. And guys without girlfriends have the potential to become angry incels, basically. And we see a little bit of that. There's one in particular who's named Beck, and he's kind of a jerk. But anyway, Tiffany wishes the guys would just leave her alone. She's feeling pressured. She's worried about resonating. When she does resonate, how she's going to deal with the PTSD she has from her essay on the ship. So one of the barbarian guys that she has made friends with, his name is Saluk. And he is the only one who is not like hot tail pursuing her. And so she kind of talks to him and she's like, I am worried because I'm having this issue. I would like to work through it with you. So they start to like meet up in secret, and she's practicing touching. And it's not all like not all that kind of touch. Like it becomes that kind of touch. But initially it's not. Initially it's just very like holding, hugging, very tender and beautiful, getting to trust things. Now, at this point, there's only two single women left, and that is Tiffany and Josie. And the guys aren't paying a lot of attention to Josie. But Tiffany is, as I said, feeling frustrated, and she's working with Saluk on her issues. So Tiffany decides that she's going to help, Josie decides she's going to help Tiffany by distracting the other guys. So she creates this like game, like a bachelorette type game. And so the guys who are single are going to compete to take Tiffany to the ancient ship. I don't remember now why they want to go there. They need to go there for something. But they're going to go to the ship. I think it's so Tiffany can get their language. That might be it. They're going to go to the ship. So whoever wins the tournament is going to, and Saluk is not even participating. I think at the end he hops in and tries, but he does not win. So this other guy leads Tiffany and Josie to the ancient ship. Saluk, even though he's been told not to, goes and follows because he just knows in his heart that Tiffany is his girl, and he is not going to let anything happen to her. But it's very interesting because it's not a possessive type love. It's like he knows her. He's taken the time to know her as a person. There is a really beautiful thing earlier in the book where we find out that she was like growing up on a farm. And so he basically goes and finds her a little cow pet. And it's just lovely. But anyway, he is the only one who like knows her as a person, and he is following to just make sure that bad things don't happen. Well, I don't remember all the details, but they get there and there is a snowstorm coming, ? Something as big is happening. And so the guy and Josie have to run. Tiffany gets hurt on the way. On the way to the ancient ship, Tiffany gets hurt because the guy who is taking them is not as good at reading her and caring for her as Saluk would have been, just saying. So Saluk stays with her to protect her during the snowstorm thing, and Josie and the guy, I don't know what his name is because he's not super important yet. I haven't had his story yet. They go back and tell them, hey, this big storm's coming. We've got to get everybody in, be prepared, safety stuff. So Tiffany is with Saluk in the ancient ship, and they're like, okay, let's go ahead and finish our practice. And they finish the practice. And as soon as they, get to home base, she resonates with him. And I love this book. So it reminds me, and I think it's a very personal why I love it. So one of the very first spicy books I read was a fan fiction when I was 14. And was it was fan fiction of Pride and Wisdom. And in this story, Kitty Pryde had been essayed is kind of a strong word. I don't think that's quite what happened, but coerced, power dynamic. Her and Colossus had done it, and Colossus was not very kind or loving, and he was very coercive about it, and she definitely felt and responded afterwards like somebody who had been essayed, because maybe she had been. Like, I'm hesitant to say that because it's not like it was a no consent thing, but it was icky. So then later, years later, she, you know, Wisdom, Pride, or Peter Wisdom is pursuing her, and Kitty is like, hey, I don't, I had this thing happen, and I don't think I can be physical with somebody. And the whole fan fiction that I read, and this again was my like first introduction really to spicy stories, was him caring for her and helping her be able to express herself intimately with a man after what had happened with Colossus. And I read that over and over again. I absolutely loved it. Similarly, years later, when I wrote The Alpha's Niece, that was a lot of inspiration for my character, Remember. So in my book, The Alpha's Niece, Remember was essayed, and then she ends up in an arranged marriage. And initially, because the guy knows what happened, there is no contact. But later, she decides, hey, I need to deal with this. And so Cyrus helps her very sweetly, very lovingly, carefully come around. I don't know if any of these examples are real or healthy, or how people who've been in that situation, what they need, how they respond. I don't know any of that. But these three stories are very similar vibes, and I love it, and I just want to eat it up. And I loved this, like loved it. And I am really struggling because now I don't know if this one or book 3 is my favorite, because I love book 3. I love book 3. But this is so good. Like, I love this too. So book 3, we had an infertile character and I really felt seen. This, we had like a trope that or a story that I love. I love the healing. I love you know, the tenderness. This is exactly what I wanted it to be. When I read the synopsis, this is everything that I wanted out of this book. And I loved it so much. So much. This also gives us a setup because Josie's so heavily involved with Josie's story. At the end of this book, Josie loses her IUD, and that's why she hasn't been resonating, and she resonates. So the next book, book number 6, yes, is Josie's book. Okay, so I was surprised how much I love this, because this is kind of a hate to love, and hate to love is really not my thing. Hayden, who has been grumpy and protective and just kind of getting on Josie's nerves forever, is the person that she resonates with. Josie has been wanting to resonate so bad. She wants a husband and she wants babies. And like, I loved the scene when her IUD came out in the last book, and I think it's repeated in this one too. Her IUD comes out and she's wandering around trying to resonate. She's like, yes, I can finally resonate. So she's walking around near all the single men being like, oh my God, who's going to be my baby daddy? Like, it was such a fun scene. She didn't really say it, but that's the attitude. She's like, who am I going to resonate to? You know, and she's like, oh, maybe it's this guy. I hope it's this guy. Oh, no. Okay. Okay. What about this guy? Well, he's kind of old. No, not him. Okay. Anyway. And then she resonates to Hayden, the one guy who she cannot stand. And like, I will say, because of the setup, we can see that Hayden is being protective. It is not, she feels like he's just being a jerk to her all the time. But I think we as the reader are aware that he's not being a jerk. He's being protective. And both of these characters have just complex, beautiful backstories. And I think of all the books so far, we get more backstory of these characters than we have of any of the other characters. And I could have really, in some cases, I'd have been thrilled to have a little more backstory of people. More about their life on Earth, things like that. But so Josie was in foster care. She was never had a safe, stable family life. And so then when she gets here, you know, this is her chance for something to be different, for her to finally get married and have babies. And she is here for it after having a very unstable life. Hayden has his own issues. So he had previously resonated to another woman, but their relationship was never consummated because she passed away from queef sickness. He also got queef sickness, and his queef had to be replaced because of the queef sickness. And he was, I think, the only survivor of the queef sickness. So he didn't think he would ever resonate to anybody again. So he's really surprised when he resonates to Josie. And Josie's surprised because he shouldn't be able to resonate because he's resonated with somebody else. Josie is livid. There is no way that she is going to get with Hayden because of all the men here. He is going to be terrible to be with and father her children, and they're just going to be miserable, and it's just going to be like every bad thing that she could ever imagine, and she's not having it. So she tells Hayden, she's like, we are going to the ancient ship, and we are going to get our quees removed, and we're going to get different quees that are not going to resonate to each other. And as much as Hayden doesn't want that and knows that it's probably not realistic, because, you know, he's like, well, Vectel resonated to Georgie even though she didn't have a quee, so I don't think the quee is the problem here. He's like, all right, well, you know, let's go. This is what you want to do. I'm not going to stop you. I want you to see that this is not possible and that you are wrong and I'm your mate, but whatever. So they go on this trek, and Josie is kind of horrible to Hayden all around. She just is. But we understand why. We understand that she's coming from a place of hurt, and, you know, he is trying to be protective and care for her, and she is reading into it as him just being a mansplaining asshole to her. They get to the ship, and they are not able to remove her quee for reasons. The machine is broke. And so she decides she is not marrying Hayden. She is going to go live off by herself somewhere. So she leaves, and he's like following her at a distance to make sure that she is safe and let her deal with her issues. Like, Hayden is just the most patient man in the world. Like, I absolutely loved him. He's so like, my female's just ridiculous, but I guess this is what we're doing. I'm just gonna make sure she doesn't hurt herself while she does this. So she's out there, and among the things that happens is she finds the remnants of the spaceship that went down in the third book and there are two other women, at least two. I think it's just two. Two other women on that ship. And so she's like, hey, we need to go back to the caverns and bring the guys here to get to rescue these girls. And so they go back to the caverns, and I don't remember exactly when in the course of this whole thing this happens, but Josie gets attacked, eaten, eaten by a bird, and she ends up fighting her way out. And then that's really the turning point for her and Hayden, I think, is she sees how devastated Hayden would be if anything happens to her, because he was ready to unalive himself. And they both are starting to talk and communicate, and they're able to kind of be like, Josie's explaining why she is the way she is, and he's explaining why he is the way he is, and that, they can make this work. And they start to really, as they go to rescue these girls, make progress in getting along, getting things to work. And it was so beautiful. So then we have the plot of there's two new girls, which I assume the next book is one of those new girls who has been kidnapped by one of the guys. And I haven't read that new book yet. I cannot wait. I'm got it on reserve at the library. I am planning on buying these books as they come out. Books are expensive and I don't have a lot of extra money right now. So, but I have bought all of the books up to this point, and I do plan to continue buying them. And ultimately, I'd like to buy every book Ruby Dixon has ever put out. But I think when I was looking at like the books she's credited with, it's like 120. I'm like, oh dear, that's a lot of books on my shelves. Gotta make some space. But anyway, I will say, I didn't think I was going to have this opinion, but I think I do. I think Hayden is my book husband. Of all the guys that we have read so far, I really like Ihako. I really like Saluk. I could date either of those. I could marry either of them. But I think Hayden is really, if I were to choose, if I were on Ice Planet and choosing a mate for myself, 100% it would be Hayden. And I think just I really love how intensely he loves. I love how complex he is. I love how protective he is. And I loved Hayden. I loved Hayden. And while this was not my favorite book, I think Hayden is my favorite hero. And I did enjoy Josie too. I enjoyed the complexity of their characters. I don't love hate to love romance generally. I did like this one. Hate to love is not my favorite trope. I understood that that was the only thing that could have worked for these guys, and I probably wouldn't have loved them as much if they didn't have that trope, but I didn't necessarily enjoy reading that as much as I enjoyed book 3 and book 5. But I love these characters so much. So yes, I've made it to book 6 of Ice Planet Barbarians. I am still having a fun time. This is an amazing series, and I cannot wait to read the next book. I'm really excited about the next book. And then like the books after that, I'm a little less excited about. So we'll see. So if you're an Ice Planet Barbarians girly and you've read further, the book that I'm most concerned about is Beck's book. And like, here's the thing. Ruby Dixon hasn't led me astray so far, but I'm really nervous about Beck's book. So based on what you know about my tastes, am I going to hate it? Or does she make it okay? Because I've definitely got some concerns about Beck's book. And some of the later Ice Planet books, like I'm definitely invested in the very next one. But then after that, like I'm not sure I love them. as much, but then I also like want to read all the books and the spin-off series and stuff. So yeah, give me your thoughts. All right. So if you've made it this far, what of the Ice Planet Barbarians, who would you marry if you were there? If you were there and you could pick your own mate, who would you pick? That's number one. Number two, who is your favorite couple? If I have to pick a favorite couple, I'm gonna say I think it's either Tiffany and Saluk or Kira and Ihako. I love Ihako. I love Saluk too, but for different reasons. And I love Kira, but I think for Kira, a lot of that has to do with how much I relate to her. And I really enjoyed Tiffany as well. So I'm not sure who would quite win. They're pretty neck and neck. I think I like, I'm going to just say Ihako and Kira just a smidge more, maybe. But okay, so who's the hero you would marry? Who's the couple you like best? And what is your favorite book so far? I'm still neck and neck between three and five. I don't think I can pick between those. But I want to hear your answers. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. If you don't have anything to comment, but would still like to help the algorithms, if you just put an emoji down there, you could do snow for Ice Planet Barbarians, not Hoth. You could do aliens. You could do books, whatever you please. This has been Jane. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.